First, giving honor to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As always, it's a blessing any time that I can share God's word. I'm truly thankful for having the opportunity to do so. With that, we'll go ahead and get started with today's lesson. And the title is Black History as Told by the Bible, the beginning of Israel as a people. In this lesson and the subsequent ones to follow, we're going to look at our history as a people according to the Bible. And the reason is so that we can get the true history of us as a people. You see, once a year, you have what is referred to as Black History Month, and there are discussions concerning the history of the blacks that were brought here to America and other parts of the world as slaves. And these discussions are quite inadequate as it pertains to our history, because never in them is there any conversation as to who we are or where we came from or where we've been outside of our existence in slavery. So we're going to answer these questions over the next few weeks, again, as we examine what the Bible has to say concerning the history of Israel, because that is our history. We're going to see that the people who were brought to this country as slaves were not colored people or Negroes, and that the label black and African American does not do justice in describing as to who we truly are as a people. We are Hebrew Israelites. We are God's chosen people. And while our ancestors were brought here as slaves and we have yet to return to our homeland, that being Israel, remaining here in America is not where our story is going to end, as we're going to see in the upcoming weeks. God did not leave our history nor our future in the hands of our captors. He put it in His Word so that we would be able to discover not only who we are, but where we are headed as a people. We're going to see in the course of this lesson that Israel, God's chosen people, are a people of color, and they don't look anything like the people that occupy the land today, claiming to be the Jew. Again, we are Israel, and this is our history, this is our story. And we're going to see where we originated from, what our beginning was, and why God chose us as a people. And we're going to see what we as a people were chosen for. We've made many contributions to society, but the greatest contribution that we as a people will make is yet to be realized. Because what God chose us for was to be His priests. We were supposed to show the rest of the sons of Adam about the true and living God, what's needed to serve Him, and how to get salvation. And what greater contribution can there be than showing one how to save themselves? We're going to start this lesson off in Romans, the 11th chapter. And again, the title is Black History as Told by the Bible, the beginning of Israel as a people. And we're going to see again that Israel is a people of color. In order to do that, we're going to look at an incident that took place with Paul. But before we do, we're going to see that Paul clearly identifies himself as being an Israelite. Romans 11, we're going to read one verse. Romans 11 and 1. You go ahead when you get there.
I say then, had God cast away His people?
He certainly had. What Paul is asking here is, has He done it permanently? And what was Paul's reply?
God forbid.
He says, God cast away His people. He said, God forbid. He's not done that. Temporarily, the Lord has removed His people out of the promised land, and He scattered them into slavery all over the world, as He had warned them repeatedly by the mouth of His prophets. He said, if God cast away His people, He said, God forbid. Go ahead.
For I also am an Israelite.
He said, I'm an Israelite. Go ahead.
Of the seed of Abraham. Of the tribe of Benjamin.
So Paul was an Israelite. He was born out of the tribe of Benjamin. Turn over to Acts, the 21st chapter. And look at the incident that took place here concerning Paul. Because Paul was in danger of being beaten to death. The Roman captain, commander, came and stopped the Jews from beating Paul. And he's going to question Paul. 21. and pick it up at verse number 37. 21 and 37. Go ahead.
And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain,
What?
May I speak unto thee?
Uh-huh.
Who said, Canst thou speak Greek?
So as Paul was being led away, he asked the commander if he could speak unto him. And he asked Paul, he said, can you speak Greek? Go ahead, verse number 38.
Art not thou that Egyptian?
So he mistook Paul to be what?
An Egyptian.
An Egyptian, did he not? But we saw clearly what was Paul. He said, I am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Paul is a Hebrew Israelite. But here this commander has mistaken him for an Egyptian. So what does that tell me? It's real clear. The Egyptians and the Israelites had to look alike.
Right.
See, one could look at me and say, are you a Jamaican? Possibly a Cuban. Maybe a Haitian. But clearly, no one is going to ask me, are you German? Possibly. Are you Dutch? Are you Swedish? No question. That mistake is not going to be made. Why? I don't look like a German. Don't look like a Danish. Don't look like one from Poland. Look nothing alike. Only way this mistake could have taken place is because the Egyptians and the Israelites had to look alike in appearance. So he said, not thou that Egyptian that did what?
Which before these days madest an uproar, and
Go ahead.
cast out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers.
Wanted to know if Paul was the one that had led a revolt. Go ahead. What did Paul tell him?
But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus.
And again, he reiterates who he is. And here he said, I am a Jew. And Jew is not a religion.
Right.
Jew is just short for Judah. Paul, what had happened? The Lord split the nation. The 10 tribes retained the name of Israel. They were taken into captivity by the Assyrians. The 2 remaining tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and part of Levi, went by the name of Judah. And it was shortened to just Jew. That's what a Jew represents. It is not a religion. It represents that you were one of the remaining tribes that was left after the other 10 had went into captivity. Paul says, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus. Go ahead.
A city in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city.
Not obscure, but what?
And I beseech thee,
What?
suffer me to speak unto the people.
He said, allow me to speak unto the people. Go ahead.
And when he had given him license,
Uh-huh.
Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with a hand unto the people. And when there was made a great silence,
What did he do?
he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue, saying,
And that should be no surprise that he was able to speak to them in the Hebrew tongue. Why? Because he was a Hebrew Israelite. Turn over to Genesis, the 10th chapter. Because the Egyptians and the Israelites are similar in appearance. And we're going to see that the original Egyptians look nothing like those that occupy the land of Egypt today. The Egyptians were a black people, a people of color, which meant that the Israelites were a black people, a people of color. That is the only way that the commander could have mistaken Paul for being an Egyptian. They had to resemble one another. And we're going to see what both people, the Egyptians and the Israelites, originated from. Because not all black people are the same. Genesis 10. And pick it up at verse number 1. 10 and 1 and go ahead.
Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah.
Noah had 3 sons, and out of these 3, the world was populated. Go ahead.
Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood.
So on this side of the flood again, the Lord had commanded Noah, them, told them to multiply and replenish the earth. Everybody came out of one of these 3 sons. He said he had 3 Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Japheth being the elder. Go ahead.
The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Japheth, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus.
Now he's telling you about the lineage that came out of Japheth the elder. Go ahead.
And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rephaim, and Togarmah. And the sons of Japheth, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim.
Go ahead.
Now these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their land, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations.
Again, these are the Gentiles. They are what's known as European, or commonly referred to as white people. If you want to know who the Gentiles are, was not Paul an apostle to the Gentiles?
Right.
Look at Paul's journey. Where did he go and preach? Did he not go to Greece and to Rome, Italy? Did he not go to Asia Minor? So that is the land of the Gentiles. But go ahead. Verse number 6, because now he's going to tell you about the youngest son, Ham. Go ahead.
And the sons of Ham.
And Ham means hot or sunburnt, because we're going to find that what's called the Africans, they're the ones that came out of Ham, black people. Go ahead.
Cush, and Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan.
He said, the sons of Ham, he said Cush, which is Ethiopia, and Mizraim, which is Egypt, and Egypt means black, and Put, which is Libya, and Canaan, which became the land of Israel. All a part of Africa. But go ahead.
And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sapta, and Rahama, and Septekah, and the sons of Rahama, Sheba, and Dedan.
Drop down to verse number 20. Go ahead. Because these were what?
These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations.
And Ham is the father of people of color. And while he was Noah's youngest son, they were the first ones to rule. The Lord allowed each one of them a time to rule, and it began with Ham. But turn over to the first exhibit. Because as I say, we're going to see that the people that occupy the land of Egypt today are different than the Egyptians written about in the Bible. Different from the Egyptians during the days of Paul. And we're going to see what happened with Egypt. And then we're going to look at what history has to say concerning about Ham. Because we're going to find he was the father or the progenitor of the black people known as Africans. He was the father of those, but he was not the father of all people of color. Began with the first exhibit, exhibit number 1, Britannica.com. You could read that concerning Egypt. Go ahead.
Egypt, country located in the northeastern corner of Africa.
And most people will tell you, if you ask where is Egypt, they'll tell you, well, it's in the Middle East. Egypt is in Africa. Right. The Middle East is something that was established in the 1800s. But listen to what recorded history has to say concerning Egypt. He said Egypt, a country located in the northeastern country of Africa. Go ahead.
Egypt's heartland, the Nile River Valley and Delta, was the home of one of the principal civilizations of the ancient Middle East.
Now, when did the Middle East become ancient? Right. What you have is they're trying to disassociate Egypt with Africa. Right. Because in understanding that, they understood where civilization started from. But now they've concocted this Middle East. It says Egypt is one of the principal civilizations of the ancient Middle East. What brought about the Middle East is when they conducted the Suez Canal. Right. And that was in the 1800s. How was that ancient? Right. But go ahead.
And like Mesopotamia, farther east, was the site of one of the world's earliest urban and literate societies.
It was a great nation, but it was a nation that was run by black people. Right. Go ahead.
Pharaonic Egypt thrived for some 3,000 years through a series of native dynasties that were interspersed with brief periods of foreign rule.
Go ahead.
After Alexander the Great conquered the region in 323 BC.
Because as I said, Noah had 3 sons, and each one of them had a time to reign. Alexander the Great was a great general. He took over the world in 321, I believe, BC. But understand, he was a Gentile, because then it was the time, it began with the Babylonians. He was the first Gentile to rule the world. But go ahead. He said after Alexander the Great conquered the region in 323, what happened?
Urban Egypt became an integral part of the Hellenistic world. Under the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty, an advanced literate society thrived in the city of Alexandria. But what is now Egypt was conquered by the Romans in 30 BC.
Go ahead.
It remained part of the Roman Republic and Empire, and then part of Rome's successor state.
Until when?
The Byzantine Empire, until its conquest by Arab Muslim armies in AD 639 through 642.
So eventually Egypt, this great nation, was taken over by the Greek and then the Romans, and finally the Arabs took it over. And we're going to see what happened to it. What happened to Egypt under Arabs' rule. Drop down to the second paragraph where it says, midway towards the end, it says, following the conquest. If you pick it up there, go ahead.
Following the conquest, both urban and rural culture began to adopt elements of Arab culture.
Go ahead.
And an Arabic vernacular eventually replaced the Egyptian language as the common means of spoken discourse.
Go ahead.
Moreover, since that time, Egypt's history has been part of the broader Islamic world. And though Egyptians continue to be ruled by foreign elite, whether Arab, Kurdish, Circassian, or Turkish, the country's cultural milieu remained predominantly Arab.
So what happened was the face of Egypt was changed. The face of Egypt today is not what it was during the days of Paul. It's been completely changed. The Egyptians, the original Egyptians, were a black people, a people of color. The people that are running Egypt today, the face of Egypt today is not what it was when the commander asked Paul, art thou not that Egyptian? We're going to see that the Egyptians were a people of color. This is Britannica, Memphis. And it talks about here, it begins with Menes. This is the first Egyptian ruler that they had records for. And he ruled, I believe, in 3200 BC. And it says here, the first king of unified Egypt, who according to ancient tradition, joined Upper and Lower Egypt in a single centralized monarchy. Then if you drop down right above his caption, right above his picture, it says, in addition to creating Menes with the unification of Egypt by war and administrative measures, tradition attributes to him the founding of the capital, Memphis, near present-day Cairo. And if you look at that picture, it says the above is believed to be a bust of King Menes, and his features are clearly that of a black. This is the face of Egypt of old. And we're going to see further that Israel is a people of color. If you flip the page, and it's just a few images here that were taken from the tombs of some of the pharaohs. In the upper left-hand corner, it begins with the temple drawing of Pharaoh Seta the first. This is he ruled from 1306 BC to 1209 BC. Right to the right of him, it's the statue of Pharaoh Mentuhotep. He ruled from 2040 BC. But if you look at it, it's clearly what? It depicts people of color. Nataya, the one on the left-hand side in the middle. This is the wife of Amenhotep. He was the king of Egypt who reigned in 1390. To the right of her is a bust of Tutankhamun. And it says, as a robust young leader. Now you also have a relief down at the bottom. And under it, if you read the caption, it says, blonde-haired attendants. People go through great measures and means to try to make Egypt look like the Gentile, or make the Egyptians look like the Gentiles. By no means, that is not the case. What you see here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gentlemen. Do you not? And each one of them, it is clear that they what? That they are people of color. The Egyptians were a black people. Again, a people of color. Just flip right to the back page. Just flip that over. And we have a statue of Prince Rehatep. And it says Prince Rehatep and his wife in ancient Egypt. Many sculptures were placed in tombs where they represented the deceased and received offerings from the living. Well, if you look at the prince and his wife, what is it clear about these images? Both of them represent what? People of color. And I look at the dress on the wife of the prince, and what that lets me know is this. If they wanted to show themselves as being white, would they not have made themselves look like her dress? But instead, look at her feet. Look at the prince. These are people of color because the Egyptians were a black people. And if you look at the relief, at the last picture, the last images say released from the tomb of Menu Inahat. These are what? People of color. Flip right over, and we're going to see again what history has to say about Ham. Because the Egyptians were descendants of Ham. If you read that, this is from the Wikipedia, where it says Ham, son of Noah. Go ahead.
Ham, according to the genealogies of Genesis, was a son of Noah and the father of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan.
And we read that, did we not? But go ahead.
Ham's descendants became the various black peoples who settled the African continent and parts of the Arabian Peninsula. His sons were Cush, whose descendants settled in Ethiopia, Mizraim, whose descendants settled in Egypt, Put, whose descendants settled in Libya, and Canaan, whose descendants settled in Palestine.
All in Africa, all people of color. Go ahead.
And founded the cities of Sidon, Tyre, and Carthage, and among others were the ancestors of the Phoenicians.
But we're going to find something else about Ham. Because again, he's the progenitor of the black people. But we're going to find out that not all black people are the same. Paul looked like an Egyptian. The Egyptians, we see clearly, were a people of color. But we're going to see that Paul, who say he was from the seed of who? From the seed of Abraham. That he was an Israelite. He didn't come out of Ham. Right. And we know if he didn't come out of Ham, he couldn't come from Japheth. Those were the Gentiles. Paul didn't look anything like Alexander the Greek. We're going to find out where he came from. Zandervan's Pictorial Bible Dictionary, if you read that concerning Ham. Go ahead.
Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood. And one of the 8 persons to live through the flood.
Go ahead.
He became the progenitor of the dark races.
The Africans, the Egyptians, we saw that. But he's going to tell us something. Go ahead.
But not the Negroes.
He said, but he was not the progenitor of the father of the Negroes. Is that not one of the terms or the labels that they applied to the slaves that were shipped not only here in America but all over the world by way of ships? Were we not called colors and Negro and black? And the absurdity of all that is Negro just means black. We're the only people that are represented by one of the crayons out of the Crayola box. But we didn't come from a black land or a colored land or a Negro land. We came from somewhere. As Paul said, he is an Israelite. And you are named by the land that your people occupy. He said, now he became the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negro, but who?
But the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and the Canaanites.
So again, the Egyptians and the Israelites were similar in appearance, both people of color. And since the Negro didn't come from Ham, we know he didn't come from Japheth. We're going to find out where he came from. Turn back to Genesis, the 10th chapter. And that only leaves Shem. We're going to see, going to pay close attention, because out of Shem came Abraham. He is the father of the Israelites. Another people of color, but they did not come from Ham, came from Shem. Genesis 10, and pick it up at verse number 21. Genesis 10 and 21. You go ahead when you get there.
And unto Shem also, father of all the children of Eber.
Go ahead.
Brother of Japheth the elder. Even to him were children born.
Go ahead. He's going to tell you about the lineage of Shem. Go ahead.
The children of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Er.
Drop down to verse number 31 and go ahead.
These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations.
Just like Ham's descendants brought about great nations, so did the descendants of Shem. Drop down to, go right into the 11th chapter. Because we're going to continue with Shem's genealogy, because we're looking for this one, none other than Abraham, whose name was Abram. And we're going to see that the Lord changed his name to Abraham because he was going to be the father of many nations. And the one nation in particular that we're concerned about is none other than Israel. 11, and pick it up at verse number 10. Because remember, Paul said that he was from the seed of Abraham. Go ahead, 11 and 10.
These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad, 2 years after the flood.
Go ahead.
And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years and begat sons and daughters.
Drop down to verse number 26 and go ahead.
And Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram.
Because it came down from his genealogy and it finally came to one called Terah. And he is the father we're going to see of Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham. He said, and Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Go ahead, verse 27.
Now these are the generations of Terah.
Go ahead.
Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot.
Read verse number 28. And where were they from? Go ahead.
And Haran died before his father, Terah, in the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldees.
So they came out of the land of Ur, out of the Chaldees. Did they not? Turn over to Genesis, the 14th chapter. We're going to see why Abraham is called the father of the Hebrew Israelite. Here, Abram is getting ready to retrieve his nephew Lot, who had been taken captive. 14 and verse number 12. You go ahead when you get there.
And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed.
Go ahead.
And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew.
Now Abram was called what? He said Abram the Hebrew. He was from the land of Ur, was he not? And Hebrew just means a wanderer.
Right.
He said, and there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew. For he dwelt where?
For he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite,
Go ahead.
brother of Eshcol, and brother of Enir. And these were confederate with Abram.
Go ahead.
And when Abram heard that his brother was taken alive.
And actually, Lot was not his brother. Lot was his nephew. But go ahead. He was the son of his father's brother. Go ahead.
He armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued unto Dan.
Now go into the 17th chapter of Genesis, because the Lord is getting ready to appear unto Abram. He's going to make a covenant with him. 17 and verse number 1. Because when Paul says that he is of the seed of Abraham, you also can say the same thing. Because Paul's lineage is your lineage. You also came from the seed of Abraham. 17 and 1. Because he is the father of the Hebrew Israelite. Go ahead.
And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him,
what?
I am the Almighty God.
Go ahead.
Walk before me and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly.
So it says when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared unto him. He appeared unto our patriarch and told him, I am the Almighty God. You walk before me and be perfect. He's telling Abram, you be obedient unto me, Abram. And if you do that, I'm going to make an agreement with you. I'm going to make a covenant between me and thee. He said that I'm going to multiply thee exceedingly. And at that time, Abram was 99 years old. He had not had a son from the union between him and Sarah, his wife. Drop down to verse number 5 and go ahead. And what else took place?
Neither shall thy name anymore be called Abram.
But what is it going to be called?
Thy name shall be Abraham.
Why?
For a father of many nations have I made thee.
He said, neither will your name be called Abram anymore. He said, but your name is going to be called Abraham. He said, because you are going to be a father of many nations. Go ahead. And one of those nations was the nation of Israel. Go ahead.
And I will make thee exceeding fruitful. I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee.
Go ahead.
And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in arid generations for an everlasting covenant.
It's going to be forever. If Abraham fulfills his end of the bargain, then the covenant that God is making with him is going to be an everlasting, a perpetual covenant. He said, I'm going to establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant. We're going to see that the covenant was passed from Abraham down to Isaac, down to Jacob. And from Jacob, his name was changed to Israel. And God made a covenant with one people, our ancestors, none other. And what is he going to do? Go ahead.
And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee.
He said, for an everlasting covenant to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I'm going to give unto thee and to thy seed after thee what?
The land wherein thou art a stranger.
Which land is this?
All the land of Canaan.
Is that not the land of the son of Ham? Africa. Before it was called Africa, it was called the land of Ham. He said, I'm going to give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger. He said, all the land of Canaan, for what?
For an everlasting possession.
Go ahead.
I will be their God.
So the Lord made a covenant with Abraham that was contingent upon him being obedient to his commandments. And he was going to give unto Abraham and to his seed the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. That's why it's called the promised land. But turn over to Genesis, the 15th chapter, because the Lord, being omniscient, he told Abraham something else concerning his seed. What was going to take place. 15 and verse number 13. You go ahead when you get there.
And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs.
He said, know this with all certainty, this is going to take place, Abram. He said, know of a surety that your seed is going to be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and what's going to happen?
And shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Go ahead.
And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterwards shall they come out with great substance.
We're going to find out the ones that he was speaking of, the seed that was going to be a stranger in the land that was not theirs, was none other than Israel. And the people that the Lord was going to judge was none other than the Egyptians. But turn over, because what you're going to have is you're going to have one set of black people are going to enslave another set of black people. But God is going to deliver his people, which is Israel. Turn over to Genesis, the 26th chapter. Because the Lord had told Abraham, what did he have to do? He had to walk before him and to be perfect. And he was going to make a covenant with him and give him the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. And we're going to see that the covenant is going to pass from Abraham down to his son Isaac. 26 and verse number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
And there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar.
Go ahead.
And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go now down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of.
Go ahead, because what is the Lord going to do for Isaac? And more importantly, we're going to see why he's going to do this. Go ahead.
Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father.
Go ahead. What is he going to do?
And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed.
So the Lord had appeared unto Isaac because of the famine. And he told him to sojourn in that land. He said, don't go down into Egypt. You dwell in the land which I'm going to tell you of. He said, I'm going to be with thee. He said, I'm going to bless you. He said, and unto that seed, he said, I'm going to give all these countries. And I'm going to perform the oath that I swore to Abraham, your father. This is God talking to our forefathers. He said, I'm going to make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven. And I'm going to give unto thy seed all these countries. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. And why is the Lord going to do this? Verse number 5. Go ahead.
Because that Abraham obeyed my voice.
Then he telling you, walk before me, Abraham, and be thou perfect. And I'll establish my covenant between thee and thy seed after thee. He said, and I'm going to do this for you, Isaac, because Abraham obeyed my voice and did what?
And kept my charge.
Go ahead.
My commandments, my statutes, and my laws.
So Abraham fulfilled his end of the bargain. Turn over to Genesis, the 35th chapter. So God is going to fulfill the promise that he made unto Abraham, being that he is God. He cannot lie. Genesis 35, because the covenant is getting ready to pass now down to Jacob, Isaac's son. Not Esau, but Jacob. Isaac had 2 boys. Esau, the firstborn, and Jacob. But God is going to make his covenant with Jacob, whose name is going to be changed to Israel, who had 12 sons, which became known as the 12 tribes of Israel. This is our history. This is where we came from. 35, and pick it up at verse number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
And God said unto Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there.
Go ahead.
Make there an altar unto God, that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Then Jacob said unto his household,
what?
And to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments.
So you put away all the idols. You cleanse yourself and change your garments, and what are they going to do?
And let us arise and go up to Bethel. And I will make there an altar unto God.
Go ahead.
Who answered me in the day of my distress. And was with me in the way which I went.
Drop down to verse number 6 and go ahead.
So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him.
Go ahead.
And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel.
And what happened?
Because there God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother.
Verse number 9.
And God appeared unto Jacob again.
Just as he appeared unto Abraham. just as he appeared unto Isaac. Now he's appearing unto Jacob because he's going to establish his covenant with Jacob, because he must fulfill the promise that he had made unto Abraham. He said, and God appeared unto Jacob again. Go ahead.
When he came out of Pandanaram and blessed him. And God said unto him,
what?
Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob.
But what?
But Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel.
God gave unto Jacob his name. The Lord appeared unto him. He said, thy name is Jacob. He said, thy name shall not be called anymore Jacob. He said, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. So the covenant is passed from Abraham to Isaac, and is getting ready to be passed unto Jacob. And he changes Jacob's name to Israel. That's why he's known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But who is this? This is none other than Jesus, the only God that man has ever known. He said, the Father, you've never heard his voice nor seen his shape at any time. So this is Jesus appearing unto Jacob. Told him that he changed his name and he called him Israel. 11, and go ahead.
God said unto him,
what?
I am God Almighty.
Go ahead.
Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee.
A
king shall come out of thy loins.
Go ahead.
And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac,
what is he going to do?
to thee I will give it. To thy seed after thee will I give the land.
So the covenant went from Abraham to Isaac and now to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. He said, the land, the promised land, the land of Canaan, which I promised to give unto Abraham and to Isaac, he said, to thee will I give it. But not him alone. He said, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. And the seed that came out of Jacob, he had 12 sons, which made up the 12 tribes of Israel. Turn over to Psalms 105. And David here is going to tell us what took place with one of Jacob's sons, none other than Joseph. Because God is going to bring his people into the promised land. But a great deal has to take place before that. Psalms 105, and pick it up at verse number 1. 105 and number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
Oh, give thanks unto the Lord.
And do what?
Call upon his name.
You seek the Lord while he may be found. He said, give thanks unto the Lord and call upon his name. Go ahead.
Make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him. Sing psalms unto him. Take ye all of all his wondrous works.
He said, you give thanks to the Lord and you call on him. He said, and make known his deeds among the people. And you sing unto him, you sing psalms unto him, you sing praises unto God. But you sing with understanding, you talk of all of his wondrous works. Drop down to verse number 8 and go ahead.
He hath remembered his covenant forever.
The covenant that he had made with Abraham. Go ahead.
The word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. Which covenant he made with Abraham, and his oath unto Isaac.
Go ahead.
And confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law.
And to who?
And to Israel for an everlasting covenant.
Again, the covenant God has made was with his people. It began with Abraham when he told him to walk before him and to be perfect. He said, I establish my covenant with thee and thy seed after thee, and I will give unto thee and thy seed the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. He said he made the covenant with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel, talking about the nation, for an everlasting covenant. He didn't give it to any other. Go ahead.
Saying, unto thee will I give the land of Canaan, lot of your inheritance.
Drop down to verse number 17. What else did the Lord do? Go ahead.
He sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant.
Because the Lord is getting ready to bring Israel into the land of Egypt. And he sent Joseph to prepare a way for them. Because what had taken place, turn to Genesis, the 42nd chapter. Genesis 42. Because what had taken place of Jacob's 12 sons, he loved Joseph. And as a result, his brothers were jealous and they hated him. And they sought to kill him. And it ended up, he was sold into captivity. He went into Egypt and rose to great prominence. He became the second in command to Pharaoh. And there's a great famine that has occurred. And now Jacob is going to send his sons down into Egypt in order to buy corn. 42 and verse number 1. So what the Lord has done, he has set the means by which Jacob and his sons will be preserved. 42, because what they looked at doing was for evil, and God saw it for good. 42 and 1, and go ahead when you get there. All things that happen to you, no matter how devastating they may be, at the time, you don't know how ultimately it's going to turn out. So what you always have to do, and it is not always easy, but you always have to retain your faith in God. Yes. Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, that's all you got. Yes. But then that's really all you need. 42 and verse number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons.
There was a great famine. And the only place where there was food was up in Egypt. Go ahead.
Why do ye look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die.
Go ahead.
And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt.
Drop down to verse number 6 and go ahead.
And Joseph was the governor over the land.
Like I say, he was sold into slavery, put in prison while in Egypt. But he found favor with Pharaoh and rose to great prominence. He said, now Joseph was governor over the land. Go ahead.
And he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth.
And understand this. They didn't recognize their own brother at this time. Go ahead.
And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them.
He spoke harshly unto them. And what did he say?
And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food.
Go ahead.
And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him.
They didn't recognize him. Now understand, this was Israel amongst the Egyptians, was it not? And to them, he looked just like another Egyptian. But if Joseph had been different from the Egyptians, he would have stood out. It would have been something peculiar about him. But these were all people of color. He said Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. Drop down, go right into the 45th chapter. Because he gave his brothers some food and they returned back to their father. Going to the 45th chapter. Because of the famine, Jacob is going to send his sons down into Egypt to gather some food, to buy some food. And Joseph this time is going to reveal himself unto his brothers. 45 and pick it up at verse number 1. Go ahead when you get there.
Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him.
Go ahead.
And he cried, Cause every man to go out from me. There stood no man with him.
Go ahead.
While Joseph made himself known unto his brother.
So he let them know that he was their brother, the one that they had sold into slavery. But go ahead.
And Joseph said unto his brethren,
What?
Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt.
Go ahead. This is the one that the Lord had sent before them to prepare a way for them. Go ahead.
Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves.
Go ahead.
And ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest.
Go ahead.
God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither,
but what?
But God.
But understand now, it was them that was doing evil.
Right.
Don't get that mistaken. Don't get that twisted. But the Lord, what they meant for evil, the Lord meant it for good. God has a way of making everything turn out the way it's supposed to be. He said, God sent me before you to preserve your posterity in the earth and to save your lives by great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he has done what?
And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh.
Go ahead.
And lord of all his house. And a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt.
The second in command. This, again, we're reading about our history. But go ahead. Verse number 9.
Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him,
go ahead.
Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt.
Therefore do what?
Come down unto me, tarry not.
So he's telling his brothers to go get their father and his father. And he's getting ready to bring them down into Egypt. Verse number 10, go ahead, and where are they going to dwell?
And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen.
Go ahead.
Thou shalt be near unto me. Thou and thy children and thy children's children, and thy flocks and thy herds, and all that thou hast.
Now Joseph is getting ready to reunite with his family in the land of Egypt. Turn over to the 46th chapter. Because Jacob is getting ready to heed to the request of his son Joseph. And he and his family are going to live, and they're going to go and dwell in the land of Egypt. 46, and pick it up at verse number 1. You go ahead when you get there.
And Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba.
Go ahead.
And offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac.
Go ahead.
And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I.
And what did the Lord tell him? Go ahead.
And he said, I am God, the God of thy father.
Go ahead.
Fear not to go down into Egypt.
Because what is he going to do?
For I will there make of thee a great nation.
He's letting him know. You're going to go down into Egypt, Jacob. I'm going to multiply you there. And you're going to become a great nation. Go ahead. Verse number 4.
I will go down with thee into Egypt. And I will also surely bring thee up again.
Go ahead.
And Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eye. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba.
Go ahead.
The sons of Israel carried Jacob their father, and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him.
So they're coming into Egypt as guests to Pharaoh. Not as servants, not as slaves. He said Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob their father and their little ones and their wives in the wagons, the provisions that Pharaoh himself had provided for them. Verse number 6, and go ahead.
And they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan.
And did what?
Came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him.
So you had the descendants of Shem go and dwell among the descendants of Ham. You had one black people travel to go dwell amongst another black people.
Right.
Drop down to verse number 26 and go ahead.
All the souls,
how many of them came up?
All the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt.
And the soul just means individuals. All the individuals that came with Jacob into Egypt, go ahead.
Which came out of his loins. Besides Jacob's sons, wives, all the souls were 66.
Was 66, go ahead.
And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls.
So Joseph had 2 sons. So it said all the individuals that came with Jacob in Egypt, which came out of his loins, besides Jacob, sons, wives, and all the souls were 66. And then Joseph and his 2 sons, which were already there, that made 69. Jacob himself is number 7. That's how many came into the land of Egypt. But go ahead.
All the souls of the house of Jacob which came into Egypt were 70.
That's 7. Turn over to Genesis, the 50th chapter. Because again, you got one black people, that's Israel, getting ready to go dwell amongst another black people, that's Egypt. Shem's descendants are going to dwell amongst Ham's descendants. But again, to show you that the Egyptians and the Israelites looked alike in appearance,